Hi beautiful people, today we're going to be drafting a short skirt with a band. I'm going to teach you how to draft the pattern. So these are the measurements that you'll be needing, and the first thing we'll start to do is to see this top edge of the paper as your waistline. So that's where our waist measurement is going to be marked. Then mark the vertical measurement of your waist to hip point. So mine is 9 inches and I'm going to mark that. Bear in mind this can vary depending on your height. So I'm going to mark from my waist to hip measurement. Mine is 9 inches and I'm going to mark it out and connect the point with a horizontal line. The next thing to do is to mark the length of our skirt. So I'll be using 20 inches. So from my waist to the length of my skirt is 20 inches, and I'm going to mark those points and connect together. Bear in mind that this is optional. You can choose whatever length you want. You can do a longer skirt or even a shorter skirt. So moving on to the waist. So what we'll do is to divide our waist circumference by 4, which mine is 32. I'm going to divide by 4 and that will give me 8 inches, and I'm going to add 1 inch. So the extra 1 inch will be used for that construction. So I'm going to mark 9 inches in total on my waist point. So I'm going to divide the calculated waist and divide it into 2. So don't forget, you have to divide it into 2. Mine is 4.5. That point will be used for that construction, and I'm going to extend it by 5 inches. So I'll extend it by 5 inches and connect the 2 points with the ruler. So marking it a straight line for that will be 5 inches. Next, you have to, on both sides of your dart point, mark ½ inch on both sides and use your pattern master or your ruler to create your darts. Next, we're going to mark our hip measurements. Our hip circumference divided by 4 is what we're going to mark on our hip line. For me, it's 10.5, and I'm going to mark that on my hip line. I'll minus 1 from that measurement and mark it on the length of my skirt. So it's 10.5 minus 1, and that will be 9.5 inches. So after subtracting 1 from our hip measurement, I'm going to mark that on our skirt length because it gives the skirt a pencil effect. So you can actually do more than that, but I'm doing 1 inch because that would give me a room to work very well on the skirt. So if you really want it very fitted and tight penciled, you can subtract 1.5, but I'll stick to 1 inch. So I'm going to connect my point from my waist to my hip, and then from my hip to the length of my skirts. I'm marking 1.5 inches for the skirt band. I didn't want the band to be too bold, so I settled for 1.5 inches. As you see in the beginning of this video, you saw the picture of the skirt and the band was not too bold, so I'll settle with 1.5. After marking those points, I'm going to use my ruler to connect the dots together to create my skirt band. This right here is our skirt band, and I'm writing 1.5 inch so that you could see and not forget. You can do more than that if you want, but it's what I have chosen to do today. So now I'm going to just cut out the skirt from the rest of the pattern. So this is my front skirt pattern, and I will be labeling it as that part as my center front. This is just to avoid any confusion, especially after you've drafted your back pattern. So now we're going to be cutting out our band. So for majority of the time, you are going to be closing your dart. So you close your dart with a solid tape to hold it down. So now you see that after I have closed the dart and tried to pretend like I've stitched the skirt pattern by holding the dart in, you see that it fits perfectly well. So now we're going to be marking 1/2 inch from the center front of the pattern. So it's 1/2 inch. I'm going to be marking 1/2 inch from the center front, and then I'm going to use my ruler to slightly connect that point to the side seam at the top end of the side seam. This is a trick that I learned recently, and it helps your skirt to sit flat on your stomach, so it gives it a perfect fit on your stomach. I'm going to label it now as cutting unfold. So you're going to cut your fabric unfold while you're cutting it. So we'll move on to the back pattern, and we'll start to draft the back pattern. With the back, I'm going to start with creating the zip allowance. So zip allowance is 1 inch, so mark 1 inch on the center of the pattern paper. So after that, I'll use my ruler to connect the points together. This point right here is going to serve as our zip allowance. Next, I'm going to mark the vertical measurement from my waist to hip point. Remember, it was 9 inch at the front, so it's going to be the same at the back. So you're practically doing almost exactly what you did on the front pattern and the back pattern. So it's just a slight difference. So now I'm going to divide my waist by 4 plus 1 inch, 8, and I added 1 inch for that creation, so which made everything a total of 9 inches. So, and again, I'm going to mark my hip measurement divided by 4. So I'm using 42 by 4, which is 10.5. Now don't forget to mark your skirt length. Mine was 20 inches, and I'm going to mark that for my skirt length. So remember, my calculated waist was 9 inches. I'm going to mark that for that creation, like I said earlier. So that makes it 9 inches. So now I'm going to divide that point by 2, which will give me 4.5, and that will be at that point where I would create at that. So the difference between the back pattern is just the zip, and again the length of my dart is now going to be shorter than the front. So the length of dart at the back is going to be 4 inches. Remember, in the front pattern it was 5 inches. So for this we're going to make it 4 inches. So creating a skirt that, remember we divided the calculated waist by 2, which was 4.5. So we marked the length of our dart, which gave us 4 inches. So now we're going to be creating a dart point on our waist. So on that dart point, I'm going to be marking out half an inch in each on both sides. So now I'm going to use my pattern master to create my darts by connecting the points slowly together, just like I'm doing now. So that's our darts. Now I'm marking my hip calculation, which was 10.5 after I divided the circumference of my hip by 4. So now I'm going to subtract 1 inch from the calculated hip, and I'm going to mark that point on the length of my skirt. So, and I'll connect those points. Moving on, we're going to be doing the band. So we're still retaining the same measurements, which was 1.5 for what we used in the front. So we're going to do that at the back. 1.5 inches for our waistband. So your skirt is almost done, and we're going to just cut it out from the rest of the paper. So this is what your back skirt looks like. We've just labeled the zip allowance. So now we're going to close our dart on the back, on the band. Always close the dart on your band. So if you see that's pretending to have sewn this dart together on the skirt, if you try to match it, it fits perfectly well. So this should be always closed. Your darts should be closed or sewn on your fabric. So if you pretend to have done that here, you see that everything matches together. So that's it, and we are done with your pattern. So that's your center back I've just labeled, and I'll do the same on the skirt pattern. Guys, please don't forget to include your sewing allowances while cutting out your fabric. Bear in mind that this pattern was drafted without sewing allowances, so please always remember to include it while cutting. That's it. Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to hit the subscribe button